The next bill on the agenda is House File 93. That is a Representative Pinto bill. And while he's getting to the testifier table, I believe his motion will be to re-refer House File 93 to the Committee on Judiciary, Finance, and Civil Law. Is that your motion, Representative Pinto?
That is indeed my motion, Madam Chair.
All right, your bill is before us, and I don't see any amendments. So please go ahead and tell us about your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Yeah, there are no amendments. It's a pretty simple bill, and in fact, I had a couple folks who were going to be coming to testify and were unable to join today, but in part, I'm okay with that because indeed how simple it is. So our state constitution, as members can see in the bill summary, I think that's actually, and you can see right in the bill itself, does contain a provision that prohibits slavery or involuntary servitude in our state, which one would expect. That's a good thing. However, it contains an exception that we might not have been aware of, which contains it's this phrase, otherwise than as punishment for a crime for which the party has been convicted. This phrase was pointed out to me actually by the former St. Paul Police Chief Todd Extell, who was one of the people who's going to be testifying today, and then I've heard about it from a number of other folks as well as being a source of great concern. Our state should prohibit slavery and involuntary servitude. Full stop. Should do that. That's true in a number of states. I should say a number of states have similar exceptions in their constitutions. It's this 15 of them do. And just in November of 2022, several of those states, including Tennessee and Alabama, removed the provision from their constitution, removed that exception. Other states that have done that as well, Nebraska, Utah, Minnesota, I think should follow the lead of Alabama in removing the exception and simply saying there should not be, it is not slavery nor involuntary servitude in the state. Members are aware that I serve as a prosecutor outside the legislature and have certainly been involved in cases that have sent people to jail, to prison, but it should be the case that that slavery and involuntary servitude should not be a punishment that is involved, should not be part of that punishment. And so what the bill does, HF93, is puts this amendment to the people as is required for constitutional amendments. It would be submitted to the voters at the 2024 general election to propose that we remove that exception. And again, Chief Exo was unable to join today. Center for Victims of Torture provided a letter that's in members' packets. I'd urge you to take a look at it. They're unable to testify as well, but wanted to provide this information and support. I believe that there's one public testifier who did sign up, Madam Chair. And that's that.
Thank you, Representative Pinto. And we do have two members now who have signed up from the public. The first member of the public signed up to testify is Antonio Williams. So please welcome back to the committee, Mr. Williams, and state your name for the record. You can begin your testimony, and please try to keep your testimony to a minute and a half.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you, Representative Pinto, for bringing this bill. My name is Antonio Williams. From 2006 to 2020, I was confined inside the Minnesota Department of Corrections. It's very hard to find someone who did that amount of time and didn't do any prison industry labor. In prison, the prisoners clean the prisons, make the food prisoners eat, make the mattresses prisoners sleep on, make the license plates that are on all of your cars, and the balloons that were at the latest event or party that you were in were probably folded and packaged by prisoners. In the Stillwater facility, where the prison industry compound is outside in garages, I have worked in the sweltering heat and the bitter cold for 25 or 50 cents an hour. What I was really working for, though, was a chance to visit and call my loved ones, go to the gym and work out, relieve some stress, and try to stay healthy under those conditions. Those are the things that are taken away from me if I refuse to work for the 25 cents an hour. The degrading humiliation that comes with prison labor is not just about being stripped of those human rights. It's also about literally being stripped naked, sometimes in front of other prisoners, and randomly searched for contraband in the form of packs of instant coffee, deodorant, or overpriced food items that the prison sells. The people entering prison for the first time, are getting younger and younger. Many of them have never had jobs. Do we as a society believe slave labor and degrading strip searches is the right way to introduce them to the workforce? Slavery, regardless of a criminal conviction, has no place in a country that claims to be the greatest on the planet, or in a state that touts itself as the nice state. I urge the committee to support HF93, and I support HF93 unequivocally. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. We also have Tom Evanstad signed up to testify. Sure. I see him here. Not seeing him. Are there any other members of the public who wish to testify? All right, not seeing anybody for that, so member discussion. Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Chair Moeller. Representative Pinto, thank you for presenting this. It's very encouraging to hear you affirm that in Minnesota we shouldn't have slavery or indentured servitude, full stop, period. 100% agree. Looking forward to voting yes on this. I hope that as we move forward in our work here in the committee and as a legislature on the whole, that we keep in mind the full meaning of that, the idea that each individual owns their own life. They own it, it's theirs, and they properly ought to be able to dispose of it however they wish in terms of the relationships they choose, the activities they engage in, the speech that they conduct. We should not be forcing people to work on behalf of other people against their will. Agreed. I do have one kind of lawyery question for you, and being a lawyer present, perhaps, and the author of this bill, maybe you could address it. So one of the things I hope to look into further at some point in our work is there's been a lot of concern expressed, both here and outside of here, regarding criminal justice, the amount of imprisonment and incarceration that takes place in society. One way that I see as a potential path to addressing that is increasing focus on restitution as opposed to incarceration, connecting people to the consequences of their actions and helping them to make things right by making their victims whole. Is there any way from a lawyer perspective that this would be in any way precluding restitution as a form of indemnification?
Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Representative Hudson, so much for the question. So first, I guess when you say restitution in my head, what I'm hearing or thinking about is restorative justice is sort of a phrase that I'd use, which is not just making the victim whole, but restoring, a crime is a breach in society, right? It's a breach in relations and kind of restoring the relationship. And no, I mean, in my view, this is absolutely consistent with that. This is saying if you've committed a crime, and I guess I'll point all of us to the sentence just before that first sentence. In part, this is responsive to your point, too, about there may be some disagreements among different members of this committee and different members of the legislature about exactly what indentured, involuntary servitude might mean. But if you look at that prior sentence, if someone has committed a crime, they may have their rights or privileges deprived. They may be deprived of those things. They may be disenfranchised by the law of the land and judgment of peers, which is the criminal process. But what it says is that that punishment consists of the punishment under law, which may be taking away someone's freedoms, physically confining them, or maybe somebody's on probation, they have certain freedoms taken away. But to say that that cannot include slavery and voluntary servitude, to my mind, removing that exception, saying that you don't also submit yourself to slavery and voluntary servitude is part of, it's consistent with the idea that our criminal legal system should be ultimately about having everybody in our state thrive, including the person who's done the breach, the person who's committed the crime, to bring them back into society as best we can. To restore those relationships. And we know that there's a spectrum there depending on what the person's done, obviously. But no, to my mind, this is fully consistent with restorative justice, and then with the particular piece of restitution of making the victim whole, which is ideally a part of any time we have a criminal sentence. And I know in our cases, somebody goes to prison or goes to jail, we're still trying to have restitution to make the person whole. Thank you.
Any follow-up? Right. Any further discussion? Representative Novotny.
Thank you, Chair Mueller. For the author, Representative Pinto, do you see this bill restricting things like STS programs or any of the, you had the testifier that spoke about the conditions working at the Department of Corrections for the 25 cents an hour. And no, I know there's numerous other programs, and I don't know, I see that retired Sheriff Leslie is here. I'm not totally current with what the STS programs is, but my impression was those were always volunteer, and that participating in something like an STS program also got considerable reductions of your sentence time. Is that something that would be altered in this bill?
Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Representative Novotny. I don't, so I don't know exactly, how courts would end up interpreting once we remove this exception, but I should say that in the many states that have removed this exception, so I mentioned Nebraska, Utah, Alabama, Tennessee, Rhode Island, Colorado, Vermont, just a few, the flexibility of their criminal legal system, the consequences imposed for crimes, I'm not aware of there being significant changes in that. So I guess when I think of STS, I think of not so much in custody, and this may be I don't specialize in the post-conviction area, but I think of that as being where somebody maybe is not sent to physical confinement, but is in a different setting. But the bottom line is, I don't view this as having a great limitation on kind of the sentences that can be imposed, but it is a statement that involuntary servitude itself cannot be a punishment. And again, in the states that have had it, this is not something that's been taken away in that way. So we still have flexibility to fashion sentences, but we want to make sure that, in the course of that, we're sending the message to people serving those sentences that they are in fact still people.
Representative Novotny.
Thank you, Chair Mueller. And yeah, I agree with the sentiment. I'm just trying to get clarification based on what the testifier brought up. I think anyone here will agree that the abolishment of slavery by President Lincoln was an important first step for this country to take to heal, and we need to continue on that path. If we need clarification that's in our state constitution, then we need to look at it. I just want to make sure that we're in the details, not putting something that, I want everybody to be on the same page, what this prohibition or what this amendment would do. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Representative Becker-Finn.
Thank you. And I just listening to Representative Novotny, I think one of the important things about this bill is it does kind of bring up some of these things that are uncomfortable that we do all need to face with the history, both the historical trauma, but the ongoing trauma that we heard from our testifier that we as a state are choosing to inflict upon our citizens. And I think it speaks to that. And if there are things that end up being changed in the way that things happen in our correction system as a result of this bill, I don't think that's a bad thing, to what Representative Pinto said and Representative Hudson as well. Like, we should not have slavery. It shouldn't be hard to say that. And so I think that it's, there may be some details that need to get figured out, but I do think there's a better way we could be doing corrections, and I know we'll be hearing some bills in future weeks to talk about that as well. But I welcome this discussion, and I'm really glad to see this moving forward this year. Thank you, Representative Pinto.
Thanks. And I do believe Commissioner Schnell is in the audience, and so maybe he can shed some light too on Representative Novotny's questions and some of the other issues raised with the bill. Welcome back to the committee, Commissioner. Please introduce yourself and try to answer that question if you can.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I do appreciate the opportunity to speak to this. As to the question, Representative Novotny, about STS in particular, I don't believe that there would be any issue with STS. We have looked at this, and as Representative Pinto pointed out, other states have removed this as well. It has not affected work programs. We're going to be talking, as Chair Becker-Finn raised, we're going to be talking about some proposals to address the issues around compensation, around how that compensation gets used at future times in this committee, we hope. And ultimately, we don't believe that this change, we're standing in full support of this change, would have any implications in terms of our programming and the changes we want to make on that front as well.
Great. Any Representative Novotny?
Thank you, Chair Mueller. And as I said, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page about what this bill means and not implying that we shouldn't look at any programs or pay scales or anything like that. So thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Closing comments, Representative Pinto. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Representative Whitty?
Sorry. Thank you, Chair Mueller. I appreciate you bringing this up. Obviously, the restorative justice is huge. And one of the pieces, looking at a quote from Abraham Lincoln, it states that nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power. And this is the ability to do good. And I take out that's Abraham Lincoln, but it's any person, and give them that part to kind of show what they're worth. And so thank you for bringing this forward.
Thank you, Representative Whitty. Now closing comments,
Good.
Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much, Representative Whitty, for those comments, and many thanks to the Commissioner for his work and Mr. Williams for the testimony. Members, this has been a good conversation, and I really hope that this is a change that we can follow other states in making. It's important that we have this statement of principle as we move towards having everybody be able to be recognized for their full humanity, which to my mind is what this does. So thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you, members.
Representative Pinto renews his motion that House File 93 be re-referred to the Committee on Judiciary, Finance, and Civil Law. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion prevails.